Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving into something really fascinating today. We are unpacking a massive theological concept tucked away in Acts chapter 14, God's covenant and the sheer gravity of grace. We're going to explore God's covenant in Acts, the covenant completed by Jesus, and ultimately the true freedom given by Jesus. It's a journey that might just completely shift how you view religious effort. So let's get right into it. Here is a quick look at our roadmap for today. 1. From death to life. 2. God's Book of Covenant. 3. The covenant completed by Jesus. 4. The man lame from birth. And finally, 5. True freedom given by Jesus. All right, kicking things off at section 1, from death to life. So why do we actually live a religious life? I mean, seriously, think about it for a second. Why do you go to church or volunteer or serve? A lot of times we operate under this baseline assumption that these actions are how we kind of earn our way into God's good graces, right? Like we're trying to build a bridge to God, brick by brick, entirely on our own. We so often treat faith like pushing a massive boulder up a hill using just our own effort. We try to manufacture our salvation through sheer willpower and rule-keeping. But here's the thing. True life given by God isn't something we earn by sweating it out. It's something we simply receive. Literally, trying to earn it actually contradicts the very nature of grace. The source material actually describes running on that endless religious hamster wheel without understanding the covenant as a state of spiritual death. You could be doing absolutely everything right, serving on every committee, attending every single service. But if you're just striving to earn salvation without grasping his promises, you're essentially trapped in that spiritual death. Moving on to section 2, God's Book of Covenant. Now this completely flips how we typically view the Bible. It's not some dusty historical rule book. Our sources define it as God's covenant and, quite beautifully, a marriage vow. And to put that into perspective, in the ancient world, covenants weren't just standard legal contracts that you could easily back out of if you changed your mind. No way. They were binding, unbreakable blood oaths. So we're not looking at a list of do's and don'ts here. We're looking at God's ultimate, unshakable promise to humanity. And every prophecy, every single ancient scroll inside this covenant, it all points directly to Jesus Christ. This entire book contains God's ultimate master plan for salvation. The whole shebang, really, is about taking someone who is essentially a slave to religious rules and completely transforming them into a full-fledged child of God. Which brings us to section 3. The covenant completed by Jesus. So there's a very clear mechanical progression to how this salvation actually plays out. First, you have the Old Testament, which prophesied his arrival for centuries. Second, Jesus died on the cross to pay the ultimate price. And third, through that exact death, the law was totally and completely fulfilled. You see, the law demanded a flawless, holy standard, and those intense demands could only be completed through one ultimate method, which is death. The theological weight here is absolutely massive. A price had to be paid. Jesus took that exact death upon himself, which ultimately means the law literally can no longer condemn us. Just imagine the sheer exhaustion of being a slave under the law, desperately trying to perfectly keep every single rule based entirely on your own human effort. It's exhausting. Now contrast that with the absolute restfulness of being a child of God. Living under grace means the heavy lifting is already done for you. You're no longer working for approval, you're working from a place of already having it. Next up, section 4, the man lame from birth in Acts chapter 14. This historical account gives us a really powerful metaphor. The man lame from birth perfectly represents humanity's spiritual condition. We're spiritually dead from birth. We are completely unable to walk toward God on our own 2 feet, no matter how hard we try. We are entirely, 100% dependent on the voice of truth to actually move us. And here's a real game changer. The exact moment you acknowledge that you are this spiritually lame man, that you're entirely helpless to save yourself, is the very moment you are actually ready to receive God's grace. Realizing your own total spiritual inability isn't meant to be a downer. Actually, scratch that. It's absolutely crucial. It's the necessary first step to hearing God's voice and receiving true life. Our sources highlight the phrase, speaking boldly, relying on the Lord. Paul and Barnabas didn't rely on their own smooth talking or persuasive techniques. They relied entirely on the Lord, speaking the words of the Father to awaken those who were spiritually dead. It was that complete reliance that allowed the voice of truth to bring about supernatural life. And finally, Section 5, True Freedom Given by Jesus. The truth will set you free. It's one of the most famous quotes in human history for a very good reason. The only thing that truly liberates a person from the crushing, heavy weight of trying to be perfect is knowing the truth of Jesus' completed work. When you really grasp that truth, those heavy chains of religious striving, they just completely fall off. Because the cross is the absolute final conclusion to our religious striving. It means we're no longer bound by endless, rigid rule-keeping, like extremely strict Sabbath observance, for example. We can finally stop striving out of obligation or fear, and instead, just joyfully accept God's completed covenant. This right here is the very core of the true freedom given by Jesus. So as we wrap up, I want to leave you with this provocative thought to chew on. Are you a slave to the law or a son who has actually found freedom? Are you still completely exhausting yourself trying to earn God's favor through your own human effort? Or are you resting in the covenant completely fulfilled by Jesus? Thank you so much for joining me for today's Explainer. I really hope this deep dive into God's incredible grace gives you a profound sense of rest today. Catch you on the next one.